As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Hey, Mom, what do you think?
You look like a gangster.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. That iconic line from Goodfellas set the tone for one of the most unforgettable crime films of all time. But behind the camera, there's an entirely different story. One filled with strange details, shocking truths, and bizarre coincidences that even die-hard fans might not know. Today, Goodfellas is considered one of the greatest gangster films ever made, but at the 1991 Academy Awards, the film was shockingly overlooked. Despite rave reviews and huge influence, the movie went home with just one Oscar. It had entered the ceremony with 6 nominations: Best Picture, Best Director for Martin Scorsese, Best Supporting Actress for Lorraine Bracco, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Editing, and Best Supporting Actor for Joe Pesci. With that kind of lineup, many critics believed the film would sweep. After all, Goodfellas had redefined the gangster genre and was already being hailed as a masterpiece. But when the night was over, Goodfellas had lost in every category except one. Joe Pesci won Best Supporting Actor for his role as the terrifying, unpredictable Tommy DeVito, and even his acceptance speech became legendary. He walked up, took the Oscar, and simply said 5 words: "It is my privilege. Thank you." One of the shortest speeches in Academy history. Pesci later explained he hadn't prepared anything because he never expected to win. He also hated public speaking and wanted to stay humble. Yet fans and critics agreed his performance was unforgettable. The way he made Tommy both funny and horrifying at the same time is still studied in acting classes today. So why did Goodfellas lose the rest? The main reason was competition. That year, Dances with Wolves dominated the Oscars, winning Best Picture, Best Director, and 5 other awards. Many critics have since argued that Scorsese was robbed and that history has been far kinder to Goodfellas than to its rivals. In the end, that single Oscar for Pesci has come to symbolize the film's legacy. Even if the Academy didn't shower it with awards, audiences and filmmakers did. Over 30 years later, Goodfellas is still quoted, referenced, and revered, proof that sometimes the Oscars get it wrong, but great films always endure. Henry Hill, the man whose life inspired Goodfellas, was supposed to vanish forever after turning informant. In 1980, he entered the FBI's witness protection program with his wife Karen and their kids. The deal was simple: stay quiet, keep your head down, and live a normal life under a new identity. But Henry Hill, he couldn't resist the spotlight. Instead of hiding, he practically announced himself to the world. He bragged to neighbors about his mob past, gave interviews, and even went on TV and radio. He got himself arrested several times for drugs and other crimes. It was so bad that by the early 90s, the FBI had no choice but to kick him out of witness protection, a move that almost never happens. They said he was a security risk, not just to himself, but to anyone around him. Did that slow him down? Not at all. Hill leaned into his fame. He wrote books, appeared in documentaries, and even launched his own pasta sauce brand, cheekily named Wise Guy. Until his death in 2012, he stayed in the public eye, constantly reminding the world who he was. For someone who was supposed to disappear, Henry Hill made sure we would never forget his name. Goodfellas is full of betrayal, but one of the darkest twists never made it to the screen. Paul Vario, the real-life mobster who inspired Paulie Cicero, wasn't just Henry Hill's mentor and father figure in the underworld. According to Henry himself, Paul had an affair with Karen Hill, Henry's wife, while Henry was serving time in prison. Henry revealed this in later interviews and in his books, but Nicholas Pileggi, who wrote Wise Guy, left it out of the film adaptation. Why? Because it would have shifted the story's emotional balance too far. But in real life, this betrayal cut deep. For Henry, it wasn't just his wife, it was his boss, the man who was supposed to look out for him, sleeping with her. This revelation helped fuel Henry's growing disillusionment with the mob life. It wasn't just about the violence or the paranoia anymore. It was about loyalty, or the lack of it. In a world where betrayal was everywhere, even family wasn't safe. That may have been one of the reasons Henry eventually cooperated with the FBI, because if you can't trust your own crew, who can you trust? One of the most unforgettable parts of Goodfellas is the Lufthansa heist, because it wasn't just Hollywood drama, it really happened. On December 11th, 1978, James "Jimmy the Gent" Burke and his crew pulled off what was then the largest cash robbery in US history. They stormed a cargo building at JFK Airport and walked away with about $5 million in cash and nearly $1 million in jewels. Adjusted for today, that's tens of millions of dollars. But here's the twist. The loot was never recovered. Not a single dollar, not one jewel. What happened instead was a bloodbath. Burke, who was notoriously paranoid, started systematically eliminating anyone who might talk. At least 10 people connected to the heist ended up murdered. The FBI was left chasing ghosts. Decades later, in 2014, an alleged Gambino soldier named Vincent Asaro was arrested and accused of having pocketed $750,000 from the job. It seemed like a breakthrough, but in 2015, he was acquitted for lack of evidence. Even Henry Hill denied Asaro's involvement, and so the money from the Lufthansa heist remains missing to this day, making it one of the most legendary unsolved robberies in American history. One of the most unforgettable sequences in Goodfellas is the final act when Henry Hill is strung out, paranoid, and convinced helicopters are following him. What makes this scene so powerful isn't just Ray Liotta's performance, it's the editing. Thelma Schoonmaker, Scorsese's longtime editor, did something bold. She broke the rules of Hollywood editing. Instead of smooth flowing cuts, she used jump cuts, rapid-fire cross-cutting, overlapping dialogue, and abrupt shifts in music. Normally, those are all considered bad editing, but here it was genius. Test audiences at first hated it. They found it jarring, even irritating. But Schoonmaker doubled down. She leaned into the chaos, making the pace even faster and more uncomfortable. The goal was to put viewers directly inside Henry's panicked, drug-fueled mind, and it worked. The audience felt his paranoia, almost as if they were experiencing a panic attack themselves. What could have been just another crime montage became one of the most groundbreaking sequences in film history. Before he became famous on The Sopranos, Michael Imperioli played Spider, the young bartender who mouths off to Tommy DeVito and pays the price. The scene where Joe Pesci's character shoots him is brutal, but what happened behind the scenes was almost worse. During one take, Imperioli was supposed to collapse backward after being shot. He tripped and fell hard into the bar, smashing his hand on broken glass. The cut was so bad, he had to be rushed to the ER for stitches. Here's where it gets crazy, because he was still covered in fake blood and bullet makeup. The hospital staff thought he was actually riddled with gunshot wounds. They panicked, rushed him to the front of the line, and only then did Imperioli manage to explain, "I'm not shot, I'm an actor. I just cut my hand." Despite the injury, Imperioli came back and finished the film. That dedication, combined with his unforgettable scene, gave Spider a lasting place in mob movie history, even though the character doesn't survive. Goodfellas is known for its shocking violence, but believe it or not, what we saw on screen was the toned-down version. When Martin Scorsese first submitted the film to the MPAA in 1990, the ratings board threatened to slap it with an NC-17 rating because of how graphic it was. That rating would have been a death sentence at the box office. So Scorsese and editor Thelma Schoonmaker had to trim down 10 separate violent scenes. They didn't cut them entirely, just shortened them, reducing how long the camera lingered on blood, beatings, and gunshots. Among the most controversial moments were the savage murder of Billy Batts, the execution of Spider, and the fallout from the Lufthansa heist. Even trimmed, those scenes are still incredibly raw and disturbing. But thanks to those edits, the movie was downgraded to an R rating, making it possible for Goodfellas to reach theaters, shock audiences, and eventually become a masterpiece of gangster cinema. Ray Liotta had one of the hardest jobs in Goodfellas, bringing Henry Hill to life. He wasn't just playing the main character, he was also narrating the film, giving the audience an inside look at the world of organized crime. To capture Henry's voice and personality, Liotta went further than the script. He managed to get his hands on real FBI surveillance tapes of Henry Hill. These weren't movie lines, they were hours of conversations recorded during investigations and debriefings after Henry flipped on his daily drives to and from the set. Liotta would play those tapes in his car, listening over and over to Henry's nervous energy, his streetwise speech patterns, even the way he told stories. Liotta later said this helped him figure out exactly who Henry was: paranoid, charismatic, always a little on edge. The result was a performance that felt raw, edgy, and authentic. Even though Liotta never actually met Henry Hill in person before filming, he captured his essence so perfectly that audiences believed every word. Robert De Niro has always been known for his method acting and relentless preparation, but when it came to Goodfellas, his dedication reached another level. Cast as Jimmy Conway, loosely based on the real-life mobster Jimmy the Gent Burke, De Niro wanted the character to feel as authentic as possible. It wasn't enough for him to look like Jimmy or speak like him. He wanted to live like him, down to the smallest mannerism. So De Niro did something extraordinary. He started calling Henry Hill himself, the same Henry Hill whose life the movie was based on, and who at the time was still in the witness protection program. Through FBI-monitored calls, De Niro peppered Henry with questions, sometimes multiple times a day. And these weren't big, dramatic questions. They were about the smallest details. How did Jimmy hold his cigarette? What brand of liquor did he pour? When he laughed, was it loud or was it under his breath? Even things as subtle as how Jimmy sprinkled ketchup on his food. Henry later said he was astonished at De Niro's obsession. Most actors would have relied on Nicholas Pileggi's book Wise Guy or Scorsese's direction. Even Scorsese himself only spoke to Henry once during the whole production, but De Niro couldn't get enough. He needed every detail, every nuance, so when he stepped into Jimmy Conway's shoes, he wouldn't just be acting, he would be channeling the man, and it worked. De Niro's performance is quiet, understated, but always simmering with menace. When he smiles and hands out money to his crew, you believe in his charm. When he silently plots to eliminate anyone who could betray him, you believe in his ruthlessness. That duality, the warmth and the terror, comes directly from the precision of those tiny details De Niro worked so hard to capture. Henry Hill once joked that De Niro seemed more fascinated by Jimmy's body language than by his actual crimes. But that was the point. By grounding Jimmy in realism, De Niro avoided making him a cartoon gangster. Instead, he became one of the most chillingly believable figures in mob movie history. It's no wonder Goodfellas continues to be studied in acting classes, because performances like De Niro show what true dedication to a role looks like. Few scenes in movie history are as unforgettable as the Copacabana tracking shot. Henry takes Karen on a date, leading her through the back entrance of the club, downstairs, through the bustling kitchen, and straight into the nightclub itself, all in one continuous shot lasting nearly 3 minutes. It wasn't just stylish, it was symbolic. Scorsese wanted the audience to feel what Karen felt, that Henry had access to a world where normal rules didn't apply. He didn't wait in line, he owned the place, but pulling it off was a nightmare. They used a Steadicam, weaving through tight hallways and dozens of extras, while every table had to be perfectly timed and lit. If anyone missed a beat, they had to start over. It took 8 full takes before they finally nailed it, all in a single day. The result was movie magic. Instead of just showing Karen's seduction into Henry's lifestyle, the audience experienced it right alongside her. What started as a backup plan since the front entrance was blocked, turned into one of the most legendary shots in cinema history.